Welcome to Mobile World Congress Barcelona 2024, and welcome to our session on a very hot and interesting topic on public to private network with OnGo Shared Spectrum. My name is Ashish Jain. I'm the CEO of KAIROS Pulse and a chief editor for an industry publication, privateLTE5G.com. And I'm privileged to be joined by industry experts on the wireless industry. Becky Bobzien-Simms from Federated Wireless CRO, Daniel Quant from Multitech, VP and GM of Router and Gateway Business, and Kurt Jacobs from JMA Wireless, VP of Solutions. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you.
I would love to know a little bit more about each one of you, and then we'll kick it off. Becky?
Sure. First of all, thank you, and JMA, thank you for having myself on the panel today. I actually started with Federated Wireless about 6 years ago. And interestingly enough, I actually started in an operations role, building the ops fundamentals, our network operations center, and really the structure for performance and supporting CBRS and our customers. We've seen a great transition and scaling of CBRS in the marketplace. So from the day one CBSD getting on our SaaS or authorizing on our SaaS, to now we see over 400,000 devices in the ecosystem. So it's been great. I've transitioned over into the sales role, and we're seeing enormous traction, not only with CBRS, but with private wireless. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about that today.
Absolutely. Daniel?
Yeah, so I feel like I've worked in telecoms, man and boy. I started, I think, at 17 with British Telecom. I've worked for various different telcos, service providers, vendors of equipment, devices, modules. Last 10 years at Multitech and managing our cellular portfolio and business unit, and really spent most of that time accelerating the enterprise digitization and process improvements within the enterprise, doing that with LoRa technology for small sensors, and of course OnGo here with cellular technology for broadband connectivity. And great to see around us here today, Mobile World Congress, day 3, so much action, and we really start to see that enterprise wireless journey taking shape now.
Kurt.
Yep, Kurt Jacobs, Vice President for Solutions with JMA Wireless. I'm an immigrant to the wireless industry a couple of years ago, about 6 years ago. And I didn't even know how my cell phone really worked. And then my job was to look out at new technologies and industries coming from other industries, and came across shared spectrum and CBRS, and then I was the first guy to go to the CBRS Alliance, which is now the OnGo Alliance, and met the ecosystem here, and that launched an entire business segment for JMA as a US RAN developer, and it really got US telecom going again for us. So I've been happy to do that, and with Federated, we're doing stuff for DoD, government, private industries, a whole range of different opportunities. So let's go jump into what the shared spectrum is.
Yeah, let's kick things off with a $1 million question that I get asked every time. It's been 4 years since the CBRS became available for commercial use. In your perspective, how would you assess the current state of its maturity and adoption?
Wow, if you're going to start with me, I'll tell you what, when that September when it first launched, nobody even knew if it would work, right? And there was a lot of fear and trepidation 4 years ago. It was 2019, almost 5 years ago.
Almost
4 and a
5
half,
years.
yeah. The SaaS vendors know more. So the RAN kind of follows, and then the device guys. But it has really matured, and it's actually moved into where it's a fundamental part of how businesses are using it. And now we're starting to see operators use it, not even the ones that have PALs, but operators are starting to use it for in-building connectivity and wireless solutions with private applications. So it's growing in verticals. It went through waves, and Becky can probably talk about that for the incumbents, the legacy wireless, to now it's moving in verticals, and it's every 6 months it's getting a whole new set of users, and everyone's comfortable with it. The government's comfortable with it. So it's really performing. I'll let others talk about that.
Yeah, I saw a similar thing. In the early days, we saw the fixed wireless access guys, really adopting the band and the technology. And they were quick movers in a sense. They had to be, their license was being pulled from them from 90 to Part 96. We saw the enterprises starting to incubate the technology. I guess a pandemic didn't help, but that took a bit of time. I think it was always going to take a bit of time. But we now see those guys moving out of trials. They're actually in deployments. They have multiple sites. They're moving their way through that business. And the neutral host network, many of us, I think, hoped that would really drive the market. But we start to see that now taking shape. So, different segments in this market, like you say, a lot of new entrants.
So Becky, you sit in the middle of everything.
I do.
Right?
It's a
you
wonderful
see everyone
position.
doing things, right? You're like a cop on everybody's
Yes.
usage of spectrum. So what are you seeing?
Well, first of all, I do want to validate what these gentlemen both said, right? Back in 2019, right, when we received the certification, that was like, what's going to happen? How fast are the operators going to deploy? To Daniel's point, it was really first adoption by fixed wireless access providers. And to today, that's a very mature business for them, right? So now it's just about expansion. You don't see a lot of new entrants into the market. It's all about expanding their network. For the operators, it's deploy, deploy, deploy. Right, we see an enormous amount of scaling occurring right now with the operators, and that's led to private wireless, right? So it's the perfect band. CBRS is the perfect band to layer on top private networks, both 4G and 5G, right? You hear the buzzword 5G all the time. What it means something so different to many different people, to many different customers. So I'm very excited to see that. I think you indicated what I've picked up on is the neutral host application on top of private wireless. We've been working with JMA now for 5 years, since the beginning, but on a very critical deployment for the Department of Defense down in Albany, Georgia. It's been extremely successful. And now we're actually expanding that role in that deployment and adding and layering on top neutral host. I think it's going to be one of the first applications that makes an incredible difference in the marketplace.
Absolutely. No, I think I'm seeing the same thing. We'll come back to neutral host in a minute, but let's say, CBRS is also called an innovation band, right? It's called an innovation band. So, and I'm seeing many new use cases, all the way from, of course, we talked about fixed wireless access, but I'm seeing all the way from connecting sinkholes to automating manufacturing processes to enabling broadcast on live sports events and everything. What are some of the no-brainer use cases that you've seen that makes perfect sense, and some of the most unexpected use cases that you've seen out there? Becky, you want to start with that?
I mean, so it is expanded. Digital divide is huge, right? There's a lot of underserved communities in this country today. As we started rolling out, or as the whole ecosystem started rolling out CBRS, we found that it was getting used significantly in the digital divide arena, right? So if I were to pick one item out of all of it, digital divide is huge.
Yeah.
And using the band to bridge that gap.
Yeah, we absolutely saw the digital divide. I mean, it wasn't. We all thought the digital divide was in rural America, and of course the business case to connect a few people in a village perhaps isn't there, but we really saw, I think, firsthand how the digital divide was the inner cities. There were plenty of different opportunities on how to connect, but these families were not connected. So we shipped many thousands of devices, everything from USB modems to Wi-Fi access points, bridges, into student homes in order to be able to connect them over a CBRS network. And not just in their homes as well, but also higher education facilities, wanting to connect students on the campus. So that market really, spiked up and continues to keep going. One of the ones that often makes me chuckle is car auction sites. So yeah, I know, right? Where am I going with this? So when there's a natural disaster out there, like a storm comes in, there's always going to be car accidents. Maybe there's water flooding. You've seen images of cars all smashed up. But where do those cars go, right? They end up going to massive, massive car parks the size of this whole FERA campus. And literally in 1 or 2 days after a storm, it goes from a couple of hundred cars to tens of thousands of cars. How do they know where every car is? How do they know what the ID of the car is? And how do they transact on that car in the salvaged market? CBRS.
Wow.
Interesting.
Unexpected.
Okay. Unexpected,
I
right?
did not see that one coming. So,
Yeah.
so the no-brainers for me are replacing wires. Everyone thinks that what CBRS is competing with Wi-Fi. It's not. It's filling areas Wi-Fi can't do. It has its place, and it's replacing wires. And when it does that, it's introducing industrial mobility, and that is delivering data to, rather, a wire only delivers data to a point, and people always had to go to a point. That's not the mobility we want. We want to deliver information to where the people are using their cell phones and or tablets or whatever the device is. So that's the first one. And then the other is when you have industrial connectivity to an area, because CBRS has wireline speeds, reliability, it stays private. Not being public, it allows unlimited data usage, unmetered. But now we can connect robots and devices that they're the ones that move, that they couldn't do before. So when you change those two, those are the two no-brainers, and then we leave it to the operational people to figure out how to use it. And I think we've all experienced as we deployed, we go in for one use case to solve it, and then over time, they figure out other ways to use it that we hadn't thought about.
It unlocks a lot of different use cases. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, no, I think it is becoming a platform for new innovation within the enterprise, because I'm seeing where the possibilities of the network they have not thought about in terms of enabling, just from a sheer perspective of saving money in terms of their existing technology they've been deploying versus bringing in connectivity outside. I mean, I think Wi-Fi is served, to your point, like a no-brainer as a de facto standard of connectivity in many, many enterprises. But there are areas which are completely unconnected. When you go to oil rigs and all places like that, where they're still using notebooks to record their progress and come back to the offices and uploading the data manually. And I think those kind of areas where I'm seeing already a lot of such adoption is happening of the 5G, 4G technology, and private networks are bringing that.
And I'll also add the value of the OnGo Alliance. People, there's CBRS, which is the spectrum, shared spectrum. OnGo brings in, infuses the 3GPP technologies, 4G, 5G, going on to 6G. And it's also the coupling of that technology with it. So the ubiquitous device ecosystem that you're providing, we now have a common way to do it with all the security, reliability, and robustness. So unless you layer that technology on top of the spectrum, you really don't have an industrial ready or something that the carriers are willing to use for a public-private network. So that's where the OnGo Alliance really differentiates from just shared spectrum.
Let's talk about public-private alliance, right? In terms of, operators have, of course, a big motivation to use their own licensed spectrum. This adds to their arsenal in terms of giving them more connectivity. And indoor connectivity has been a long-standing problem. I don't know how many years it has been. We've tried to solve using so many different technologies. Where do you see CBRS now playing a role in that, bringing the private community enterprise networks and the service provider cellular networks converging and enabling a better indoor connectivity experience for everybody that we all struggle with?
Yeah, I'll give an example, and then I'm sure everyone else has here, but I'll use the Super Bowl just a couple of weeks ago in the United States in Las Vegas. And actually in Las Vegas, at the Super Bowl, the highest density, complex RF environment, most usage ever, 100,000 people, everyone uploading all their pictures of the halftime show. CBRS was used, Dish had their PALs activated. Verizon had their PALs and was using even GAA for commercial services. The NFL coach to coach, every play was called over CBRS. And then we deployed with our system to do all the broadcast operations for CBRS Sports. And last year we did Fox Sports, and we worked with Federated. And so we had 4 major critical use cases working on the same spectrum band. But then there's more. Just down the street, there's a hotel in the Caesars complex that is running CBRS with 2 different operators. This is announced at Mobile World Congress Americas. They've been operating AT&T T-Mobile. They're using it for private 10-story hotel. They're delivering private applications and delivering cellular service. So we had all 4 carriers using CBRS in the same geographic area and multiple use cases during the most demanding event. So if that isn't a testament to shared networking and public-private being able to work, I really don't know what is.
So Becky, you want to add to that?
Yes. We were thrilled.
Because we get excited about this.
Yes, we very excited, right? We've been thrilled to work, great use case with the NFL, by the way. We've been thrilled to partner with JMA and Verizon in providing those coach-to-coach communications in the last couple of years. But even beyond that, I think about CBRS where other solutions don't work, right? I think about healthcare. You think about the actual physical makeup of a hospital where those walls are super thick and Wi-Fi is not going to work, right? I think about college campuses. Where, and this is indoor, I'm specifically thinking indoor, where they have new innovation centers that they're setting up. And again, we're dealing with the same physical makeup of building structures where Wi-Fi just doesn't work. And we're deploying CBRS to effectively reach the gaps in coverage and provide those indoor services. But NFL is great, healthcare is great, higher education, filling in the gaps where there's lack of coverage or Wi-Fi just doesn't reach. But it's also an augmentation, right? So you're augmenting the cellular or the carrier service. We're not saying do away with it, right? We're saying we'll reach beyond where the current services don't. So indoor and outdoor.
Yeah, no, and I'm already starting to see industrial use cases which are like very, very mission critical, business critical use cases like manufacturing. I know John Deere you mentioned, somebody else mentioned John Deere's name earlier. They are using extensively the CBRS spectrum.
Yes,
they're of course a power license owner as well, but they were different from every other enterprise that they really invested in it. But I've started to see LG Electronics, another chip manufacturer who has started to use CBRS, and they've really started to embrace it for their mission-critical functions now.
Yeah, and this is a great example of crossing the chasm here. Companies like John Deere, they started with one site, POW, aggregating with GAA. They're not in the middle of the Super Bowl, so where their facilities are, they don't have too much interference, especially at the power levels that they're transmitting inside their facilities, and so they're able to connect so much stuff up. They've been very clear about this, that the average manufacturing facility requires 20,000 sensors to be connected. Now I'm looking up in the ceiling here of the facility in the FIRA. You couldn't even fit 20,000 cables up here. It's just not practical to connect 20,000 things over cable. Not to mention the cost that entails to run all those cables. So they've embraced CBRS. They've done 7 or so sites now. Most of them are using POW and GAA. And now they're looking to take it international to all of the facilities around the world where they want a consistent digital approach to how they manufacture their autonomous robots and vehicles.
Yeah, I've seen crazy numbers from Jason, 100,000 miles of wires in their single largest factory, and how can they replace that with wireless network? Now I think the ROI is right there.
Yeah, it is.
Exactly. All right, so...
And to Kurt's point, it opens up a whole bunch of new opportunities. Now you have a network, you can start doing autonomous vehicles, you can start moving things around, and that takes us to a density that Wi-Fi just wasn't able to deliver. Wi-Fi works on autonomous vehicles for a few of them, but if we had 100 of them in this trade show hall here today, they'd be stopping all the time where they're losing signal. So
We've seen
opens
that.
up new
We've
use
seen that.
cases.
I mean, JMA and Federated Wireless have seen that, right? So on the DoD Albany deployment that we've done. As a matter of fact, John Deere is a great example. We're working with an AGV vehicle and an aluminum manufacturing company.
Very nice.
Where they are going to require an autonomous vehicle to lift 50-ton coils of aluminum, right? It does not work on Wi-Fi. So it's a perfect use case using private wireless over CBRS.
Absolutely.
And the DoD has come up with a very great term that I've learned over the last few weeks. We have digital transformation, it's key to that, but they're calling it data maneuverability. They need to maneuver the data to where they need it, and enterprises need that as well. And the outcome is significant. And the Albany project, they're cutting the number of the staff in a warehouse from 24 to 9. They're cutting the time from dock to stock to dock from days to hours, even minutes. And they're changing their inventory accuracy from not very good to 99%, which is saving them a fortune. So that investment is actually, without changing their operational processes, that was the other key thing. They didn't change the back end. What they did was they made the back end available where it needed to be, and then they started to see those impacts.
Yeah.
And it's really mind-blowing what the impact can be. But you need the flexible spectrum to be able to do that.
No, I think that's where we'll start to see a lot more innovation coming in, where the spectrum and the connectivity becomes an integral part of their operational process every day, right? And I think I'm going to switch gears a little bit in terms of the...
One second, Ashish. A good example of that is how the connectivity is an enabler, right? So you put all the AI on top of that, and now you know when your next shipment's arriving, how much is coming, where that truck is, when it's going to be at the loading bay. Maybe that gets you down to seconds.
Yes. The AI, those demands, everything that's being talked here at the show, it still needs that connectivity.
Yeah. So let's talk about, now that you have leaded me into a technology topic, so we'll talk about how the technology is evolving, right? I mean, we've seen CBRS use in a lot of, we call it private LTE, 4G, and now I'm seeing a lot more on the 5G side, and with RedCap coming in, the reduced capability, enabling more, I hope that really fulfills the vision of this whole massive IoT with 5G. How do you see that coming into your deployments where customers are leaning towards, a bigger vision and the bigger promise of 5G with these private networks, with these neutral host networks, and bringing the whole IoT ecosystem into this?
So maybe I'll kick this one off. So we announced actually at the show this week, Mobile World Congress 24, RedCap devices, so 5G RedCap devices. So during 24, you'll start to see that rolling out not only maybe on public operators, but definitely in these private networks in the enterprise. We touched on the 20,000 sensors, all those devices. RedCap works between 1 and 100 megabits per second, and it brings that cost point down for a UE device to less than $500. And that really opens up the opportunity to connect more autonomous vehicles, robotics, welding machines, torque wrench machines, so you know exactly how tight you've screwed a bolt and you have a digital record of compliance of that. So I think that 5G RedCap is really going to truly bring alive the IoT section of this technology.
When are we seeing a $5 device?
$5?
Yeah,
well, pays for
We're all looking at you, Daniel.
It's on the way there. So,
well, I think that's what we need for a mass market adoption.
Yeah.
But you do a lot of work on 5G, Kurt.
Yeah, so 5G is delivering enhanced mobile broadband. With private networks, we're getting low latency. We're getting less than 20 milliseconds. That critical for AR, VR. You hear about the Vision Pro, people getting sick. The deployments we've done, Albany and other, as Whidbey and other customers, they're able to now use these new technologies and enable them because we can get to that. And the massive devices he talked about. So the three promises of 5G are being enabled by CBRS because we have access to the spectrum. It's not tied up with the carriers and their roadmaps. We have 200 companies in the OnGo Alliance that are each trying different things in different verticals. Not every one of them is going to work, but a lot of them are. And it's really accelerating the innovation and it's uniquely U.S.
Yes.
To do this, and it's really in our DNA to do that. But also with 5G comes the virtualization and the automation and running on software running on COTS infrastructure. So Federated was not traditionally, a RAN, but you built the IT network that we brought our system onto because you had IT experience. So we're able to bring in different companies and different skill sets, or actually common skill sets to build this, and that's exciting. And it's taken out of the domain of a few, and it's opening it up to the many.
Yeah, no, and I was very excited with seeing the 5G Plug Fest last time in the October event, and I hope that evolves further in bringing more and more partners together. Becky, how are you seeing this from on two angles? One is from a spectrum's allocation perspective. Do you see any difference in devices connecting over 4G versus 5G? Or
Sure.
from your own deployments perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So a very unique perspective, right? So we provide the spectrum that a lot of our partners use to deploy private wireless. And then, of course, it just makes sense for us to do it as well, right? Very similar to CBRS, right? It's all about adoption in the ecosystem and growing that, maturing that. We're doing that with private wireless right now. Obviously, there were quite a few more 4G devices that were enabled to use CBRS, but 5G is growing, right? That is happening today. We see it happening. You mentioned some great use cases, but even in mining, right? Mining, point of sale at stadiums. So we're seeing it expand. Again, I think it just takes a little bit of time for maturation in the adoption process. Early 4G, but I do see it transitioning to 5G, definitely.
Absolutely, and absolutely. I think we're seeing the same thing and more to come. So let's look at, I look at convergence from a different perspective. Convergence, I mean, of course, CBRS is great. It's actually an enabler of a lot of things, but multiple technologies are going to converge. You sit both on the LoRaWAN side and the CBRS side, and we are seeing more on the Wi-Fi side and the cellular converge at the same time. So how do you see this, let's say we sit here next year talking about converged use cases of wireless for enterprises? Where do you see this going, and what kind of new innovations and use cases do you expect by next year?
Well, I look at the people on the picture right behind us, these young people, that there's a new workforce that is used to having ubiquitous connectivity. This is providing that, but being able to get those business applications and operational processes on devices they're very familiar with, and then also getting connectivity to the service providers, because we still need that, right? We carry with us multiple personas, even at work, and we need that connectivity. So CBRS is going to do it, and I think it's just in the last 6 to 9 months that the reliability and kind of the credibility of CBRS has changed, where we have carriers, AT&T, T-Mobile, that will connect users through CBRS on GAA. They didn't buy the PAL auctions. So, I mean, that's a huge vote of confidence. And what that's also driving is it's not just shared spectrum anymore, it's shared infrastructure. And that's changing the cost model and economics. So if I can put in and connect my users for consumer, commercial services, do the private wireless and the operational, and have that, we are changing the cost model and the carriers are willing to connect in. This is the game changer to get those in-building connectivity deserts where most connectivity needs to happen, that they're flourishing. I mean, it's springing water up to grow the trees.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I see a convergence from the stack down as well. The average customer, the enterprise, they've got tablets, they're trying to monitor CO2, water leaks, vibration on machines. They've got autonomous vehicles and welding machines. These are a vast number of assets, a lot of different KPIs there. Some products run on batteries for years and don't have much to say. Other products require super low latency and a flood of data when that data comes in. And to imagine that one technology, one RF wireless technology somehow can do all of that, it is not really the case. What we're seeing firsthand with our customers is that Wi-Fi isn't going away. It's not about CBRS killing Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is still used for worker productivity, tablets and what have you, computers. LoRaWAN is the dominant technology now for low-power wireless access, has been for a few years. So that's connecting all the sensors that are maybe telling the building management system where all the temperature, humidity, CO2 levels are. And then CBRS represents that foundational RF coverage of the campus that's bringing all that data up into a data platform, a building management system, a SCADA system, where all those decisions are made. Customer doesn't care about the RF technology. They just want to pull all that data in and digitally transform their organization.
I would definitely agree with that, Daniel. As a matter of fact, the deployment that we did down in Albany, it's just not one technology, right? We're looking at expanding that particular type of use case, not just within the DoD, but also commercially, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that private wireless over CBRS is the only technology that's going to bring all of these use cases to bear. But what is interesting is that what we're trying to do is say, we're not looking to replace everything. We're adding complementary services and more mission critical networks, right? So you can keep your Wi-Fi, but if you need an application to be able to run on time without interference or congestion, that's where your private network over CBRS comes into play.
No, I think that's a great vision to have, and I think we're coming to an end here. So for that vision to become more scalable and repeatable, probably the last question, what do we need as an industry to make it possible and make it so simple for an enterprise to adopt this?
Well, I think we're well on our way. As Daniel said, the customer isn't seeing the complexity of the technology. We've worked through all those issues, and it's now delivering a service so they can operationalize it. The other and kind of unspoken hero here is actually the U.S. government. They actually enabled, and they're working with industry, and they're listening to us. In fact, they haven't been able to find any interference. We kind of started this out where they started very conservative. They wanted every 5 minutes want to know if systems are up. Yeah. They've relaxed those things. So and they're listening to us and making changes to actually, because they see the benefit of it. So that's one aspect to really move it forward, because the government and they're working with us, and that's progressing. And that's so, that is unique, because usually you set a rule, a part, whatever, and it stays forever. They are actually evolving, and the customers are evolving. And we're doing this as like an IT deployment versus a mobile technology deployment.
Yeah, SaaS is very new. We've not really seen that. Other countries perhaps haven't adopted that yet. But it's really been a game changer. And Federated, obviously, very much at the front of that market, which has now provided real data, real evidence to the government. I mean, it's not often that you thank politicians, is it? But thanks for opening up the spectrum. So now, with that kind of data coming back from the SaaSes, they're really looking now to reduce some of those limitations, move up the heartbeat, deployments less than 6 meters. Again, I'm looking around me. Right. There's not much bigger than 6 meters around here. Those kind of deployments now are going to be a lot simpler to deploy, and I think we're going to see a lot more companies now pick that up, thanks to that data that comes from the SaaS.
Yeah, I would say that this was a very successful proof of concept, right? It's well beyond that. And when you've proven it out, it wasn't just Federated, right? It was the entire ecosystem. It was the device manufacturers. It was the customers, our partners, and of course, working with regulatory bodies and alliances like OnGo. So it took I wouldn't say a village, but an entire ecosystem to prove it out, and it's been very successful. I think you're going to see a lot of new bands opening up for shared spectrum. As you're well aware of, the 6 gigahertz band has just opened up, and we received our public notice. That's what we do. and we're very passionate about it. And I think there are a lot of use cases out there that prove that this is successful. So again, pleasure working with everybody and making this happen.
I think that it's proven in 4 years, sharing is the future.
It
And the
is.
national spectrum strategy for the U.S., I think sharing's mentioned 47 times.
Yeah, I think we are
And
proving
license, I don't think is, you know.
I think we're
so-
proving the childhood lessons of sharing is caring, right? So I think this is coming in reality. Well, thank you everyone for your time.
Quick question, Ashish, to Mr. Government over here. Is there any, or actually maybe, you know, the SAS here, is there any record of an aircraft carrier having had a disturbed experience or a lack of operation or
No.
or
Zero.
any
Zero.
sites that have been shut down
And-
because an aircraft carrier probably didn't come past the Super Bowl, but an aircraft carrier
Absolutely
coming past?
zero. There have been none. Very proud to say that. So again, another proof point that this has been very, very successful. And that's why you're going to start seeing some of these relaxations and benefits come towards CBRS and other bands.
400,000
Access points and
broadcasters,
zero.
they can't find any interferers.
That's right.
Great success story. Before I say thank you again, anybody else?
Good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
Great session.
Thanks, Ashish.
Thank you, everybody.